Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to the Expressions Podcast, a show where each and every week we introduce you to new creative mindsets, let you know how they get their creative ideas, what makes them flow, what makes them go. And on today's episode, we have a very special guest, a theater major in Ralston Harris. So get ready for a very, very fun episode with the one and only Ralston Harris. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the Expressions Podcast. It's myself, Ryan Knight, my good buddy, Brian Weiss, my good buddy, Mark Flinders, my good buddy, Aurora Robertson. We're all good buddies here. And we've got a very special guest today in Ralston Harris. So before we toss it over to Ralston, I got to ask, how are my co-hosts doing? Brian, how are you doing today?
Awesome, man. It's been a great week. It's been an awesome week. And I'm really excited to talk to Ralston. The poem that I saw, the written word, I don't even know the terminology, but it was powerful and it really made an impact on me. And I can't wait to talk about that in a few minutes.
And Mark?
Doing excellent. Had a great weekend. The weather's finally stable for us up here in Thunder Bay, and the snow's all melting. And looking forward to summer coming. It's going to be awesome.
Ah, that's beautiful, beautiful. And Aurora, how have you been doing the last week?
I've been doing great. Very busy, very productive week, but I'm really excited. And I just wanted to say, Ralston, that video, I had a chance to watch it, and it was extremely captivating. I can't wait to hear a little bit more about the backstory behind that.
And of course, we're going to be talking all about the video that Aurora is referring to, which is, of course, the letter to Orillia that Ralston released. Was about 2 weeks ago you released that video now?
I think it was about last Friday.
Okay. But
2 weeks ago.
About 2 weeks, and in that 2 weeks has been making the rounds. It's certainly getting around social media. It's having a big impact, I hope, on our hometown. But before we dive into that, Ralston, how have you been doing, man? Because it's been a few years since I think you and I have been together.
It has been
just a couple.
It has been a minute, my brother. But no, things are pretty good, thanks. I'm living in British Columbia right now, and blessed to have great weather and have a job and just be working and to be doing what I love, and just grateful to be here. So thank you.
That's excellent. That's excellent, man. So what we want to talk about today, obviously, is you're somebody who has a very creative mindset. You have a very, very strong creative mind. I know you're in BC right now trying to work on your acting abilities, your public speaking abilities. You're trying to basically apply yourself to as much as you can. So talk to us, before we get into this video, I want to know a bit about Ralston Harris, because you and I grew up together in Orillia. What do you know about Orillia that caused you to, I wouldn't say move away, but was it lack of opportunity that brought you to BC to follow your creative mindset, or what sort of forced you out of Orillia?
I wouldn't say necessarily that it was the lack of opportunity. I would just say, given who I am and what I was wanting to pursue, that was where there was a lack of opportunity at the time, perhaps. I just kind of felt like it was time to spread the wings, go west. Time to take a risk in my life, time to do something different for myself, to grow into myself too as well. I felt that was a big part of it, that, I was scared to do it, but I knew I needed to do it. And also there was a little bit of a thing where my brother once traveled here, and when he returned, he just really had his head on straight and a little bit more focused. So I was just maybe looking for a little bit of magic as well.
Mm-hmm. So it was almost like you had seen somebody who was successful, coming out to BC, was able to change their life or change their perspective in a way and come back a different person. And you wanted to try to see if you could follow that same path in your own way.
100%. Exactly. In my own way. And I think that's exactly important what you said, in my own way, for sure.
Yeah. Now, in doing that, you've gone out to BC. Now, you've been living there for about 5-6 years, roughly?
5 years about, yeah.
Yep. And in that time, have you found what it is you've been looking for? I guess that's the best question, because I know you're a creative mind. I know you're somebody who's constantly adapting, trying to change who you are and become a better person. So have you found that BC has given you what it is you've been looking for?
That's a good question. I think where I'm at now, it's like I'm always looking. You know what I mean? I'm always trying to evolve. I'm always trying to grow. I'm always trying to learn. I'm always trying to love, in the sense of putting myself out there in a vulnerable way, where it's like that's just where I learn the most. That's where that's where I feel that I appreciate after going through those difficult times, or at least those vulnerable times. That's where I can look back and appreciate. So to answer your question, I think it's like it's not that I'm looking for something specific now. I think it's just the idea or concept of just continuing to grow and evolve and learn and create. It's not about looking for ourselves. It's about just creating ourselves.
Mm-hmm. No, you've nailed it. Actually, that's a really good mindset to have. It's about creating yourself. I don't think enough people approach life with that mindset. I mean, I think a lot of people fall, unfortunately, into that trap, and I was guilty of it myself, of falling into that trap of thinking this is what life is supposed to be, this is how we're supposed to live our life, and not really expressing ourselves to the full extent. So I think, oh, Brian, yeah.
I'm just curious, when you first moved to BC, how old were you? Because that's a big life-changing move. So like, what stage of your life were you at that point where you can just say, I'm done, I'm moving to BC?
Well, I was 26 years old.
Okay.
And I was fortunate to move with a friend and his sister. And also, I think I was just at a time where it was like, if I do this any longer, I'm just going to get too comfortable. And it's going to be just too easy. And that's not what I need or want, you know. And events in the past or shortly before that kind of showed me a little bit more of life, and you know, you have to risk it. You have to go out there and do something and make something of yourself. And yeah, so it was just that time, you know.
Good for you. Good for you.
That's awesome.
It's a huge decision. I mean, at 26, looking back to what I was doing at 26, my big decision was, you know, what shirt am I going to wear to my job that I go to every day and have gone to every day and will go to every day for the next 25 years. So yeah, I got a lot of respect for making that tough decision. That's good for you.
1,000%. Because like even myself, I moved out of Orillia at a young age, but I never left the province. You know, I still stayed within a couple of hours to my hometown, a couple of hours to my family, and a couple of hours to what I knew. So to leave the province entirely is, as Brian said, that's a huge step. And especially at that age, it's a risk. And it seems like, at least at this stage, it's been paying off for you. So let's kind of dive into your creative mindset a bit, because I know you are doing quite a bit. You've been in BC for 5 years. You've been acting, you've been public speaking. So talk to us a bit about what you've been doing in BC and sort of how you got to where you are.
Okay, well, first off, when I first moved to BC, you know, I thought it would be easy, to be honest. And first at that point, the dream was, or the goal was, just to enter the mainstream television, you know, just to be that guy and to put my Orillia on the map, you know, and make people recognize, like, look, I'm doing it, you know. And I think that was not wrong per se, but it's just part of the process. When you're really that committed, you can understand and appreciate. Again, still, like, looking back, I wasn't, of course, there at that moment, but it evolved where, of course, you know, I started getting into theater at that time too as well. And I got an agent, and it was a really good agent. And so we were really mutual on a lot of things. So he was putting me up for many auditions, which is good. And it was really hard though, honestly, like, and so at that time too, I may have got one call back out of all the auditions I went to, from commercial to film and television. But I met a director doing theater, and we started to form a relationship and a working partnership, and it just grew from that point. And I've been lucky to do, I think, 4 or 5 plays with him now. And
that's awesome.
Different radio. Yeah, I've been on the radio with him as well. So, you know, and just meeting people and just the whole theater community now, it's like I learned that it's like, wow, I just love that as well. There's so much to that, where if I just was blind to go straight into film and television and be focused on that and not, you know, kind of be ignorant or just
It was deflating the ego almost. It sounds like you were able to deflate the ego and just say,
yeah, you got to enjoy it. You know what I mean? And so like I was being a little hard on myself as well. And so, you know, with the theater, it just opened my mind to so much more.
mm-hmm. That's awesome. So I'm kind of curious, when you moved out to BC, did you have the intent to get involved in theater, or was it strictly music and television, or were you just moving out to BC for a change?
It was film and television, my man.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was the plan. Like, you know, and I think that was probably the ego for sure. And also like, I think just a plan that I wanted. But, you know, again, like I think you grow, you learn, you adapt, you have to. If you especially want to be the, you know, a genuine, creative, giving person, it's like, yeah.
And I got to give you a lot of respect, man, because it takes a very strong person to be able to have that kind of an ego where, like, I was the same boat, and I still kind of am, if I'm honest, where, you know, you want to be the top, you want to be the best, you want to go right to the very top if you can. And to be able to go into that environment and then all of a sudden see what's there and be able to take a step back and say, you know what? I don't need to be this main star on TV. I want to learn about acting. I want to get involved with these people and just grow with them. That's a huge step that I don't think a lot of people are capable of taking. And I think if more people were aware that that's the best route to go, it's going to change a lot of lives.
Well, thank you. And it's, you nailed it. That's it.
Ralston, I'm actually pretty curious about what kind of plays you've done and what parts you've played.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, to think I've been in one called Incident at Vichy by Arthur Miller, I believe. Don't quote me on that. But that was a World War II play, believe it or not, about the involvement of Nazi occupation in Vichy, France. And I actually played, believe it or not, I played a Nazi collaborator, the French captain of police. So despite my color and look, I was still able to play that role. And from that point, different ones. One act play called Finders Keepers. It was just kind of like a comedy about a lady that stole a violin, and I was a police officer. And there was one called Enter Laughing, and I played actually a stage manager. So it was kind of like a play within a play.
Oh, that's cool. Interesting.
So things like that. And just as of recently, if I may, I partaked in it was kind of like a standing up play where we just all were at our own booths and just reading, kind of like a play reading. And at that same night, one of the actors that was due to come up in another play coming up, he did not show up at all. So the director called on me to do the play super short notice. But that's what I love. You know, that's where it's like you step up, you just test yourself. You don't even test yourself. You just have fun, but you ultimately just get past that one boundary, you know?
Mm-hmm. So, but you got to show up, right? You got to be there.
You got to show up. And why not just say yes, you know? Yeah.
Yep.
You know?
Sometimes you need to push yourself to do these things and try to put yourself out of your comfort zone. So that's really cool.
I think that's it. You got to live beyond your comfort zone, you know?
Yep.
You nailed it. You said it.
For sure. When you were living in Orillia before you moved to BC, were you doing anything within the film and television industry?
No. You know, I did have an agent a couple years back, but it was a learning curve at that time. It was just a commercial. Or no, I partaked in a Rookie Blue episode, but at that time, no. I was doing improv, traveling around doing little shows and whatnot with a group in Orillia, but no, not film and television at all.
Okay, so you were doing the improv in the theater here, and then when I went there, that's sort of where you landed to start out in BC as well. So that's pretty cool. And you've had, so it sounds like you've got the Incident at Vichy up here on the screen. I'm going to read a little more about that after, but that's interesting that you landed into those types of roles and that you've really started to grow with it. So that's great. Kudos to you.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I'm a little bit curious too. When you mention those roles, has there been one role that's been more difficult than the others, or have you been able to kind of adapt to each role in a similar mindset?
Honestly, I think the first one was just the hardest, just in the sense like getting the monkey off your back, you know.
Mhm.
But also, I learned a process maybe around my second or third play where just trust yourself, trust the people you're working with, trust that you're going to be able to give them what you need, and they're going to be able to give you what you need in that moment. And it, you know, obviously I know my lines, and that's another big part. It's just trusting that you do know your lines. And it's like a lot of people are like, let me check my scripts, you know, and it's just like that. Everybody's different. I respect their process. But for me now, I just learned so much about just trusting it. And so I think that was a big, major influence going forwards on just everything I do. You know?
Well, not just an influence, but it sounds like it was a big a help, if nothing else, too, that you were able to, once you got past that first role, as you said, you were able to approach each role with, okay, just apply myself, learn it, and be confident in it. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with a stunt person, and one of the things that she said that really has stuck with me is how everything, she would go out and try all these different things, take jujitsu classes and take, you know, jumping out of airplane classes and all these different things to help build up her toolbox, to help build up all the things in her repertoire that could make her attractive to people that would hire her. Do you think that the roles that you've played so far are those building blocks, those things that you're going to put in your toolbox and draw from? And like, are you still trying to take jobs for that reason? Or are you at the point where, you know, you're just, I don't know if you ever get to a point where you're past the learning blocks, but like, do you see it as that, like everything has its own purpose for future? You're going to do this so that you can learn how to do it so that you can do better at it down the road type of thing?
Yeah, I'm a big believer of that, to be honest. And, you know, I do training to this day, and will always do training in one sort of type of way or not. You know, it might be physical training. It might kind of evolve, but it's like even the greatest to this day still train, you know. But to your question as well, it's like I'm a big believer that all the roles that I've been cast in now and that I've done now are serving me greater for the next role, or sometimes it's just someone you meet that can relate, or that you can, because in one of the plays, actually, it was the Finders Keepers. It was about a hoarder lady that stole a violin. And so at the end of the play, though, there was a lady that was emotional in just talking about how she was at that point. She was at the age where she's getting older, and she's a hoarder, and you know what I mean? So it's just like where everything serves someone or something, or even myself going into the future. You know, I'm a big believer of that. Absolutely.
100%. I kind of want to switch gears a little bit now into that letter to Orillia, because we talked about your creative mindset. Everyone's gotten an idea as to the kind of mindset that you have, I guess, when you approach life. And it's a very commendable mindset. I think a lot more people need to be able to approach life with that mindset in their own way, of course. But you reached out on social media and released what was called the letter to Orillia. And it was about a 2-3 minute long spoken word, all about the tragedies that have gone on over the past few years and the state of our hometown. And for those of you that don't know, Orillia, unfortunately, it's a beautiful city. It is a wonderful city with wonderful people that unfortunately has its fair share, like any city, of problems. And Ralston has been very outspoken about it. And thank God he has been, because I think, like him, I want to see this change. I want to see change, not just in Orillia, but in general. I want to see people that are struggling with addiction, with crime, with whatever it is that they're going through in their life, sort of find that light and find a way to change it. So Ralston, where did you get the idea to come up with this video? What possessed you to release this and be as outspoken as you have been about it?
Well, first off, the open letter to Orillia was, I hate to use the word inspired. You know, I'm just going to cut right to it. It's like I lost like 6-7 friends. I don't even want to start counting. You know what I'm saying? And one of them, okay, well, there's a picture I have on my Facebook, and it's like, this was a couple years ago before I moved to BC. And just as of now, you know, it's a group shot, all of us, you know, whatever, having a good time. but on either side of me are good friends. But in that picture, on either side of me now, those friends are gone. They've passed away. And so I think just the loss and not being able to be there and help and give myself to the people that need it the most, you know, just a hug or something, or just try to understand, you know. So like I said, I hate to use the word inspired, but it was just drawn from the need to, you know, like I released a video prior to that was just me just being frank, video right in my face, you know, just like, hey guys, what's up? Like, we're hurting, you know. And that kind of circulated a little bit. And so I just knew at that point there was something building, that there had to be something, or someone had to say something or step up. And the time was now, and the time is now. And, you know, like, again, like I've lost, like, again, I don't even want to start counting.
It's been rough. I can definitely attest to that. So
yeah. So yeah.
I want to play the video real quick for everybody. Now, we don't actually have the video loaded up, so it's going to be fixed in editing. But here's a video for those of you that have not seen it quite yet.
Please don't let this offend you, but this is an open letter to Orillia, the city that I grew up in, the city that's getting depressing. It's not a rap, just something in my pocket I wrote from scrap. You can call it a rant, but don't misunderstand. This is for all those who can't.
5 years ago, I moved away from Orillia for the dream and to give it back to all the people that believed in me. 3 suicides, 2 murders, 1 year, 0 answers. It breaks my heart, but my soul will not rest as it puts fuel on my fire that the tears can't put out. Our brothers and our sisters are dying. Mental health, drug addiction, we're all denying. I'm fine! That will be the last time that the parents find out that their kid was lying. Now instead of birthday candles, it's a casket that they're buying. Tim Hortons every 40 feet? Yeah, but a city must prioritize its obligations to its people in the Northeast. From rising crime, drug addiction, and unemployment? Again, I'm sorry if this is too poignant, but that's easy for me to see when she didn't even get to see past 33. Let's talk about this year, how we were really tested. Let's talk about how you had to see your brother getting arrested. Let's talk about how 2020 was one for the books. Mystery. But now that chapter's behind us. History. Making us all feel unclean. Let's talk about COVID-19. Fuck it. You know what? The fire doesn't need more gasoline. We just lost another to overdose, and this time she was just a teen. So do what you do with love, and don't be afraid to give that stranger a hug. Give them your heart, and that's a true fact. We must listen to each other more if we want true impact. Talk when it's hard, and listen when it's harder. Make peace, and let go of that hate that you harbor. As we grow older every day and go our separate ways, try to be the one that cared to those that needed you and those that were scared. Don't be afraid to pick up that phone, reach out to that friend, write that text, and hit send. May not be easy, life's gonna be hard, but just try to direct your life like a Martin Scorsese. Thank you. You all inspire me to be the best that I can be. Never forget where I come from, no matter what I become. Put us all on the map, not just a promise, but another guaranteed fact. With love to you all, and until then, if you need anybody, you know who to call. And if I die, let them know that I was making my dream a reality. One more time, welcome to Orillia, Tim Hortons every 40 feet, that I shot my shot. Rest in peace, Chadwick, Regis, and Kobe.
It's quite an impressive video. quite an impressive video. The one thing that I really want to focus on is your attention to detail when you filmed this, because this is shot in multiple shots. It is you walking down this alleyway at one point, and you're stepping over broken needles. You're really trying to make a point, not with just your words, but with the visual representation as well. Where do you think, not just Orillia, but where do you think we need to start as a society to try and make these changes? What do you think is the right first step? Or is there a right first step? Do we even know what the right first step would be at this point?
Well, I'm not a professional, and I never, studied this or anything, but just being a human, I think just the first step would be just us, just opening up more, our ears, our hearts, our minds, our eyes, and again, like it's cliche, but like we just can't judge each other,
It's tough because, and this is a hard conversation to have, because both you and I were very close with a lot of different people that unfortunately we've lost over the last few years. And to me, I don't want to have to keep going through that. It sucks. It's one of the hardest things when you know that it's avoidable. It's 1,000% an avoidable thing. This isn't something that we should have to ever go through. Loss is something that you deal with in life, but this sort of loss this many times becomes just, it's too painful at points. It definitely becomes a very painful thing to deal with. So I commend you. I really do, for having the courage to put that video out. I know I certainly wouldn't have had that same courage. So and to put it out in such a unique way, and I like that you came out and said, I hope this doesn't offend anybody, but at the same time, even if it does, it almost needs to, it should offend the right people.
For sure.
Yeah. Brian, Mark, Aurora, I know you guys have all seen the video. You guys aren't from Orillia, but I'm sure you can relate to, in different areas, the different things that go on. How did you react to the video? How did you find the video? And what was your overall takeaway when you finished it? I know, Brian, you've seen it a few times now.
You know what? It's tough to see any community that's hurting. There's a lot of similar problems in Sudbury. I've heard Sudbury has a lot of issues with drugs and all kinds of suicides and so on. And I think what I would like to know is, what's the cause of this? Like, is it boredom? Is it not enough things to do in town? Should there be more programs to help people find something to do, after school projects that they can work on? Like, what is it that's actually okay? So here's the thing. I'm almost 8 years old, and when I was growing up and going to school in the 80s in high school, 80s to 89,
mid 90s. Yep.
There was no internet. There was no cell phones. None of this stuff was a thing. I lived in Vermont, and I'd go to school and take about an hour to get there because my school was so far away. There's so few kids in Vermont. The problems weren't the same, is really what I'm getting at. My problems were boredom, sure, but when I was bored, we'd go out and play in the 400 acres that we lived on. Like there was things that I could find to do with my buddy Scott, and we were always listening to music or doing something. But now, in the same exact location, in the same area, there's drugs and there's violence and there's theft and crime and there's all kinds of craziness going on. So what's so different now? Because we have everything. We have all the luxuries. We have all the internet. We have is that the problem? Like, could that be part of the problem as well? Or could it be, like, do you have any idea what caused these friends of yours to either commit suicide or die from drugs? Or I'm not quite sure of the stories there. So, like, do you have any idea what that could have been? What kind of stressors were there that made this happen?
Me personally? Well, I would say it's all of it. Mental illness, social pressures, lack of employment, jobs, COVID, I think there's all of that mixed with, if I haven't said yet, drugs and drug addiction and access, the lack of other access, you know what I mean? It's goes hand in hand.
Access to the bad stuff is easier than the access to the stuff you need.
Exactly. And I'm getting hairs on the back of my neck when you say that. So that's it.
Yep. And that's what has to change.
Yep. To add to Ralston's point, and to kind of counter yours, but I don't think it's necessarily the new technology. I think that plays a small part, but I think it's also that as technology has adapted, so have drugs, so have all these different things. So I think there's so many different avenues that could cause somebody to fall down the wrong path. Like for me, it was simply issues with my family, right? And then I had issues with my family that caused me to move out at 16, and before you knew it, I was on the wrong path. I didn't have access to a cell phone at that point. I didn't have access to a computer. It had nothing to do with social media. It was simply issues with my family.
Dynamic, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's for anybody. It could be different for anybody, and you never know who's going to fall into that trap for any number of reasons. You could see somebody in a really good position, and they could still wind up falling down that same hole. And it's hard to narrow down why, unfortunately. I lost a very, very close friend of mine 2 years ago now, and he was unfortunately murdered. And I grew up with this guy. I've known him since I was about 5-6 years old. We were very close, and unfortunately, we went down different paths. He was still an amazing guy. At the end of the day, him and I were still very good friends, even though we went down two completely separate paths. That even to the day that we lost him, it was shocking, because then it kind of opens your eyes to say, was there something we could have done to help them? Is there anything we were able to do? And again, like you said, there's just so many different things out there now that it's hard to know what it is that's causing someone to be in that rut.
And your friend who was murdered, that was in Orillia as well?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, that was actually like blocks from my parents' house.
Yeah. Yeah, it was right around the corner from my uncle's house. Just right around the corner. So,
Mark?
That's I mean, your spoken word, the video, it really resonated with me. I grew up in Newmarket, so not all that far from Orillia. And my family, my wife and I, and our fur children have recently moved to Thunder Bay. We did that just over a year ago now. And what we found when we got here, and I knew because I already worked in Thunder Bay, is that there is an issue with substance abuse, and there is a crime issue. So as Brian said, so many cities, so many areas have the same sort of issues, social issues, with the communities, and it breaks my heart to think that so many kids are falling through the cracks. And I think part of it is like when I grew up. I mean, my dad was the only wage earner in the house. My mom didn't work; she looked after us. So it was in a different time, right? There was always a parent there. So we didn't have a parent that was coming in sort of after a hard day's work that wanted to just relax and had to deal with this. There was always a parent there when we got home from school. If we needed mom, she was there. So it was just a different family dynamic altogether. And then as with technology, the world goes faster. Kids are learning more earlier. So pressures are mounting, and then even now, where all you have to do in non-COVID times, go to a hockey arena and watch the kids on a Saturday, and the pressures are there. They're supposed to be having fun playing a game, and the parents are yelling at them. They got to skate harder. They got to skate faster, and I think all these pressures we just keep adding to, and then these young adults now need the release as well, and then to Ryan's point, can head down the wrong path. But as I said, your spoken word that really did resonate with me. I can't wait till the episode airs, so that I want to share it then. I don't want to share it now and sort of spoil the surprise. But not surprise is the completely wrong word. But spoil the impact that the show will have with it. But no, very, very well spoken, and it's really, you could replace Orillia with so many towns, and I think that's why it's going to resonate with a much broader audience than just Orillia and that the Barrie area, Orillia area. Even though for the bit of levity you did reference the Orillia song with the Tim Hortons every 40 feet, so I thought that was a classic move. So
good catch,
but really good. It was just something that resonated with me. I haven't played it for my wife yet, but I will after we finish taping tonight.
Thank you.
So yeah, I thought the video was very captivating. I've throughout my life I've moved into different areas. I lived in Bradford, and I experienced, younger people of my age when I was in elementary school, getting into weed and other drugs. And, I remember being shocked at people in elementary school. But it was really hard seeing that, and being a person who was trying to kind of help my friends around that. I know that family plays a big factor, or your home life, whatever it may be, plays a big factor into, how you can get involved in these things. And after I moved from there, I moved to Stouffville, and Stouffville had the same issues. I moved to Vaughan, and there's areas of Vaughan that were the same, and like no matter where you go, you're always going to find it. And I think that myself, like I experienced it the most when I was actually working out of a store downtown at Queen and Church, right in the city, and literally right across from the store, the next park over is just filled with people who are dealing drugs, who are addicted to drugs, who've been homeless, and they're living in the park. And it's really, really a tough thing to see, and see people struggle with it on a daily basis. So I do definitely think this is a big issue that needs to be brought forth. I feel like, we shouldn't have to lose people anymore. There should be more programs out there to, help people cope with getting through addiction and getting through mental health issues. I mean, from personal experience with friends and family and other things, that it is always definitely better when you do have someone at your side. And I think it was really brave to come forward with this message. So I really appreciate you doing that.
And Ralston, I'm not sure about you personally, but I know, like, I've been open on this show before that as somebody who has struggled with addiction, who went through that. And it was, when I moved out at 16, living in Orillia, I was doing different drugs. I was definitely falling down the wrong trap. And for you personally, and I don't expect you to open up in that way, but did you ever find when you were in Orillia that you were falling down a similar path, or that you were doing things that you didn't want to be doing necessarily? Or was it more so for you that looking back now, you see all these people that are unfortunately going down this path, and it's tragic?
I'm far from perfect too, like, I've done my fair share too as well. Like, I hung out with the wrong crowd. So I don't need to tell everybody, but like, I definitely saw myself just doing things that's not who I was. That's not who I was supposed to be. That's not who any of us are supposed to be, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I knew that was not me.
And I think, and I appreciate you being fairly candid there with us, because I think that's a big thing for people to understand, is that it does get better. It's one of those things that when you're in that trap, like for me, for years, I can't count the amount of times my mom to this day is like, remember when you used to say that everything was pointless and that it was just a waste of time and blah, 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 blah. And I went, yeah, that was pointless and a waste of time. Because at the end of the day, like once you find, I hate to use the term find that light because it's so cliched, it's so whatever, but when you're able to pull yourself out and actually view the world through your own eyes, not through what your friends are trying to tell you to do, not through what the drugs are trying to tell you to do, not through whatever nonsense is in your head at that time. And I hate to call it nonsense, but that honestly is what it is. When you're able to see the world through what your actual perception is, it'll change everything. It honestly will. And I think it's no secret that a lot of kids, especially at a young age, it's easy to get wrapped up in the party lifestyle. It's easy to get wrapped up in drugs. And at the end of the day, it might be fun for a short while, but for anybody listening that, again, is wrapped up in that lifestyle, you are able to find a way out of that. There are people out there that are willing to help. I really, really hope that you take what Ralston has said today and take it to heart, because it will change your life. It honestly will. I'd really appreciate you being as candid as you have today, man, because it's going to be life changing. If people can take this sort of advice and just apply it, it will really help save lives. I honestly believe that.
I'm a firm believer that when people fall down these wrong paths, there has to be a catalyst. There has to be something that gives you enough of a shake to say this isn't the right path, or else.
But the problem there is that when is it too late?
Well,
right?
this is really what I was getting at. Is unfortunately most of the time that comes way too late. So, did you have a catalyst that finally, something just happened where you said, this is the thing that just has to get me out of here"?
While you're thinking there, Ralston, I'm just curious if it's anything along the same path as mine. That's not my cat.
Is that your cat, Mark?
Sorry, that's mine. He's deaf and he stands in the hallway singing the song of his people.
That'll break the tension.
Sorry.
Like for me, it was a matter of like when I moved to Orillia, I was in a really bad place. So there was no real catalyst, but I also knew there was a point where I felt terrible. I wasn't great in any way. And I started to realize that I wasn't going to be okay, that my life wasn't going to go in the direction that I wanted to. So I got out. I said, you know what? I need to separate myself from this environment. And I just moved away. And that was that. So I moved to Stratford. I've been here for 9 years, sober, well, not sober, but off of the hard drugs, off of all the bad stuff there.
On a safer path.
On a much safer path. And that's the other side too, is that you can still enjoy life's pleasantries, more or less, but you have to do it responsibly and safely and in the way that you're able to. But for me, it was just knowing that I wasn't in a good place and knowing I had to escape from that environment. Was it something similar for you, Ralston, or were you in a different kind of path?
Yeah, I think it was a little different for myself, you know, and this is just me speaking as honest as I can. I always have felt destined for great things in my life. And like the urge, that urge to do those great things, and so, I just kind of just blindly living life. And then sadly, my brother passed away. And so I think that in time afterwards, of course, like after grieving and dealing with it and, associating myself with the right people, and hanging out with the right crowd is what I'm saying. That's when I learned it. And maybe my brother had an influence where it's just like, okay, like it's time to live. It's time to go out there and not just chase the dream, but make it reality, I give him, it was somewhat his fault of me becoming so much more of that person to live my life, just to be able to see death so closely. In my own life personally, it was just like, okay, life's precious, life's short. And I made promises to my brother, we made promises to each other. So it's now my time to,
that's important,
make those promises fulfilled. It's like live his legacy.
That's a lot of pressure though, too.
Oh, I put immense pressure on myself, but it's better myself because no one else can,
Yeah. Yep.
But that's what I'll say, what really gave me that push, And
that's
it's
awesome,
tough still. I'm not saying that it was just like, no, it's like you fight with it. It's tough.
So
life is a daily battle.
Yeah.
So I'll just say
5 years later, I'm curious, what do you think is your toughest battle you deal with now?
Probably patience. It's like I still want it tomorrow. I want it now. And it's not that I just want it. I think it's just being okay where I'm at now and accepting that and not having to think outside of that too much or rush the process, or I think that would be it.
Or being too critical of yourself.
Yeah.
So many creative people are so critical of themselves. And I can hear that in what you're saying a bit.
Yeah, we're absolutely always our own worst critics.
Yeah, no, 100%. 100% we are. As we start to kind of wind down here a bit, guys, Brian, Mark, Aurora, do you guys have any final questions here for Ralston?
Something you said kind of resonated with me when you said that you feel like you are destined for greatness. And I totally know what you mean. Ever since I was a little kid in Montreal, I've always known, like, why would I be here if it wasn't for something special? Why would I have this ability to think about things and to see my place in the world if it wasn't because I was supposed to be in a high place in the world. I always felt that. The older I got, the more I realized that life kicks in and you've got to pay the bills and you've got to do what you got to do. It's turned into, I've begun to accept my place as one of the ants on the anthill. And not that that's a good thing. And it's not a good thing, really. But at the same time, it sure does help you understand why I'm not a millionaire yet. You know,
that's the key word, though. That's the key word is yet.
It'd be lovely, I tell you.
So, like, honestly, if we want, I kind of want to mention or touch on this for a second, because you brought up age there, and the one key point that I noticed is as soon as you said I'm not a millionaire yet, the first thing Ralston and I both jumped on was yet. And I think a lot of it comes down to a mental battle, whereas you might see it as, oh, at an age thing, like I'm starting to understand that I'm just this ant on a hill. But I think at the same time, like even with doing this Expressions podcast, I think it's all about the mindset. It's all about the mentality that you can still make a huge impact no matter what age, sex, religion, no matter what you are. If you put your mindset to it, or you apply yourself, the amount of people that have made it in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and even 80s is incredible. So.
Right. And on that note, if I may too, it took, again, losing some close friends for me to understand that, you know, as we both and all perhaps and everybody watching or listening, we have that urge, that call to greatness. And it's like, for me, I thought, okay, my impact will be then. That's when I'll impact, you know? But again, it took me, losing some friends, going through some things where it's like, no, I can have that impact now. And the time is now. And so that's what really pushed me to do the video too, where it's like, wow, like I can't wait till I'm quote unquote living my dream or quote unquote famous or a millionaire to then reach out to the people. It's like, no, the people need it now. I'm going to give it to them now.
Yeah.
And I think that's where within the now, that's where we create those ripples that lead to opportunities or lead to breakthroughs or whatever it is for anybody. That's what just leads you to your greatness.
Yep.
That's a real great point. I want to sort of play the devil's advocate on the whole millionaire comment. While all of us dream of having enough money to not have to worry about things, the money comes with its own set of problems. Or so I hear.
I'll convince you, or we'll talk about that when we all get it.
But Brian, you said something you said resonated with me. You said, you know, I felt I was destined for bigger things, and I would argue that you have found those, and many of us have. So think about like, and I can speak for Ralston. I mean, obviously you've started in some plays. You know, your spoken word. You're going to touch people in their heart, in their minds, in their soul, and I think I'm looking at this group of people that are on my screen right now and thinking each and every one of us has a spot. You're here for a reason, and keeping in mind that greatness does not necessarily mean you're famous. Greatness is because you've touched enough people's lives that you've made a difference in those people's lives that maybe Ralston, somebody will see your spoken word and you know they'll flush their supply, their stash. They'll get rid of their rig and throw it out. Brian, I mean you've taught I don't know how many photographers. Aurora, the same. I mean, you teach people photography and you get into their lives. Maybe you teaching that person or selling them, whether it's selling them gear or teaching them how to use it so they create that first really good image that is well worthy, that they get those accolades from. Maybe that is what sets them on that right path. It's that catalyst that causes somebody to pick up and move to BC and become great in their own right and become that artist. And so many of those people we're going to be speaking to on these episodes. And then Ryan, I mean, your wrestling podcasts and it's a pure entertainment value and just you know the people that you get to talk to and things like that. I sit there and I look at the four of you and I think every one of you is this person that people turn to in times where you may not even know that they needed you and your input and just that one little thing that you taught them. I mean, I know Brian has been the one that's taught me the most about my own craft of being a photographer. And Brian was always that photographer that I looked up to. And everybody on this screen can be that person and may already have been that person, and that may be your purpose here. So when you think about greatness, and it's really for the viewers and the listeners to the show, is don't think about greatness as becoming famous. Think of it as your calling is, maybe you want to be a stage actor, maybe you want to be a great photographer, a teacher, a mentor, an entertainer, or a nurse, or a salesperson, a marketing, whatever it is your dream is. Follow that dream and stay on that path, and your greatness will come if you work hard. Like Ralston, you've worked hard, and that's greatness can be defined in many ways, not just by fame and fortune.
No, I 100%.
And I've talked enough, so I'll shut up.
Yeah, but at the same time, Mark, you left yourself out of that whole thing, because at the same time that maybe I've inspired you, there's been some of my worst moments in photography that you've been able to reach out to me and just say a couple things to make me feel better. So it just, again, I agree. And I think it's really cool that you were able to sum it up like that too, that, everybody has a purpose and everybody has to just kind of stay true to themselves, and hopefully that purpose will boil to the top, and we'll all get to do what we love to do. My whole hashtag in life is I shoot for me, to take away the stress of having to live up to other people's expectations and so on. But really it's like my protection. It's like my shell from negativity. Okay, you don't like what I'm doing? Psst, I shoot for me. Yeah. And that just gives me the permission to just be me, whether you like it or not. So, and exactly. That's something that you were a big part of, Mark. So giving me that confidence.
No, I think that was extremely well said, Mark. Extremely well said.
No, if I may too, lastly on that note, I think too, for myself, I completely agree with Mark, and I've now kind of, insofar as how I've evolved, it's about just giving. It's about giving back to the people, in everything I do, from public speaking when I'm on stage, it's about me giving myself to them in that moment. So it's just as long as I can give of myself, doing who I am, what I love doing, and maybe make some money doing it, and maybe make a lot, who knows? But of course I got goals and plans and whatever, side hustles and everything else. But it's just like, no, it's like, that's where the greatness lies, And
it sounds to me like you found fulfillment already, like to a certain degree. You've been able to know that this is what you want to do, whether it brings you fame and fortune. You know that you're going to be able to build on your legacy doing this.
Well, I think again, it's like sticking and being committed to the process, the journey, and also trust. Once again, I just trust that it's leading me. It's that whole saying that, you shoot for the moon and you land amongst the stars. I trust it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just trust
100%.
Very well said. Very well said. Aurora, do you have any last questions for Ralston before we finish up?
So you seem to be a very inspirational person, a person that likes to give and help people to create and help people to make change in their own lives. Do you have anybody or anything that has inspired you to be this way? Like, do you have a role model or something that triggered your need to help people, need to perform, whatever it may be?
Well, I blame my parents. First
Blame.
My parents. Yeah. I'm lucky and I've been blessed. I have a mentor and just amazing friends. Less is more. I've got like 3 just really solid, great friends who, it's like before I even posted the video, even the first video, it was just like I went through him just because it's like, is this me? You know me more than me. Is this me? But ultimately, like I've just been really blessed in the circle of people that I've been around, and I just trust that it's just who I am. You know what I mean? That's a tough one, But again, I think with the mentor, my parents, my brother still, and just everything I've went through in my life, it's just about being authentic, being me, and hashtag I shoot for me.
Nice. You could use
Love
it too. Seriously, it gives me permission. It really does make me feel better when I can repeat that to myself, you know?
Of course.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to say this is like, I'm far from perfect. I'm trying to grow and get better and learn and evolve every day. That's where I'm like living in constantly. And again, just with my circle of friends, we have this thing where we text each other maybe once a day. It doesn't matter, but we'll text each other DFG, where it's just that reminder, destined for greatness. You know, just it could be like my best friend's busy with his daughter, but he'll have just enough time to be like, hey, reflect success, DFG.
Yep.
Just those little things that keep you pushing, keep you in it, you know? So to anybody watching or listening again, it's just like, you know, send that text. Just send, hey, man, I'm here with you. I see you're fighting. You're doing a great job. Keep fighting. I'm right behind you. Whatever it takes. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's that just little text that just goes so far.
That's excellent, man. That's very, very well said.
Awesome.
Ralston, before we wrap up here, I really want to thank you for what has been an extremely therapeutic conversation in a lot of ways, an extremely eye-opening conversation, I think, to a lot of others as well. This has been something that I've really wanted to do ever since I saw your video. I'm glad that we were able to make this happen on such short notice. Before we let you go, though, we got some questions for you. We want to know a little bit more about Ralston the person. Beginning with, what is your jam? What are you listening to right now? What music is playing 24/7 on your Spotify or iTunes or whatever platform you use?
Joyner Lucas, you know,
I
don't know why, but he's got some good lyrics. He's really good with his words. And also Mozart. I'm guilty, but that's how I study. That's how I get into certain vibes and just really get into certain energy.
I mean, Brian's trying to focus something there. Yep.
There it is.
There you go. There's one. There's two. You just hit my magic button right there.
Love it.
and Brian alluded to his age earlier in the show, and he just showed us cassette tapes. So
I love the way he lit up there. As soon as you said Mozart, the smile on his face was just, it was beautiful.
What is this, Brian?
What is? I don't know what that is.
I can't.
Is that a window? Is that a refrigerator? What is that? Well, it's funny because I do a lot of conversions for people. So I've got a tape deck, I got a VCR, and I got a DVD player right here, so I can convert. So yeah, I dug out my old audio cassettes. I'm guilty.
Good for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I love that combination though. Joyner Lucas and Mozart. That is a combination I didn't think I'd ever hear, and I'm gonna have to try that pairing one day. One of these days, I might have tried that pairing. I'm a huge Joyner Lucas fan, and if Brian's into Mozart, I'll give it a shot. I've
never even heard of Joyner Lucas, so I'm excited to check that out.
I've got him on the screen now too, so I'll check it out after we.
Awesome. And our second question for you, Ralston, is what are some of the tools of the trade that you use on your day-to-day life? It could be anything from something that you physically use, a mindset that you have. What is something that gets you through each day and gets you through your career each day?
Food.
Or your creative mindset?
Food.
Honestly, you know, that's a good one.
Honestly, I love food so much, but I would say more than that, it's the discipline of working out for myself. It just keeps me grounded, almost keeps me disciplined, like I said. So like, I'm no big jack super person, but it's also just doing that every day, you know, and if I don't do it every day, maybe 6 days a week, but also it's just about being committed to that. And it just, again, from there, I can even helps me think and prioritize everything that's going on. So lately it's been just working out and yoga.
There you go.
Different things.
I like that. I like that with each episode, we've gotten some vastly different answers for the tools of the trade. But I think it's something that somebody will be able to apply, right? Like for me, it's not working out. I'll tell you right now, Ralston, I love you to death, but I will never go to a gym.
Yeah.
Because for me, that won't do anything for me. They won't do anything for my mental state except for just stress me out and make me go like, nah, I don't want to do it. But there's a different tool that I have. Whereas for you, it's working out. For everybody, there's something different. So I really hope that people are able to, again, just hear these conversations and take what you've said, take what our past guests have said, and try it out. Try and go to the gym. I've tried it. I learned that wasn't my trick. But for other people, you never know until you actually give it a try. So I really appreciate the vast different answers that we've been getting on this show. So before we let you go entirely, though, we have one last request of you, and that is for a challenge to our listeners. Each and every week, we ask our guests to present a challenge to the listeners, something they can take away from this episode and try to apply to their daily life. So what is the challenge you have come up with for the listeners of the Expressions podcast?
I would challenge the listeners of the Expressions podcast to write in a journal, perhaps. It doesn't have to be long. It does, I would just try to write 8 words or maybe 8 lines. And if you get that far, maybe 8 pages. But just be committed for one, maybe, how long is your challenge?
It's for a week technically, but it could be an ongoing thing if people really. I mean, we're not expecting people to reply to us and say, "Hey, we did the challenge. Thanks. Here's my results." But at the same time, they're going to take it and maybe use it as a tool for themselves to improve their day-to-day, right?
Yeah. Well, I would say that then. Maybe make enough time to write maybe in your journal once a day.
Awesome. I really, really like that. It's something that I've meant to. It's funny. My grandfather actually used to write in his journal. He had a journal for about 40 years of his life, maybe even longer. And I always was inspired by that, but I've never actually taken it up. So I'm glad you've laid this challenge down. Now I can maybe actually wrap my mind around doing it and actually focus on writing in a journal each day. So,
yeah, I challenge you.
I'll go back.
Yeah. What's that, Brian?
I used to write in a journal all the time, but it was only when I was really stressed out. Like when I used to work for Nosh Audio back in the day, it was such a horrible job that I'd go to the bathroom and I'd hide in the bathroom and I would just write in the journal all the anger, all the things that pissed me off, calling us Canadian doorknobs and all the stupid things that they used to do. Just horrible. I mean, that's the stressor. And I knew one day I'd read this back and I'd think, okay, I'm in a much better place now. And if I were to read that today, absolutely I'm in a much better place now.
But also too, if you just wrote just good things as well, when you needed, kind of some reassurance or something from yourself, when you can reflect upon those good things when you're in a bad spot, and I'm not blaming you. You probably know this as well too, but it's just like it's a good point. It's a very good point. You shouldn't just focus on the bad. You should also focus on the good and give yourself permission to like the good. And last point I'll just say on that, it's like my best friend received his grandpa's journal as a gift as his grandpa passed away, but there was a couple pages ripped out. So I'll just think it's just like live a life great and grand, but then some of your pages still have to be ripped out.
That's cool.
That's really, really well said. Before we let you go, Brian, Mark, Aurora, any final words, thoughts, or questions for our guest today, Ralston?
For me, I just want to say thanks for being here. It's been a great conversation. I've enjoyed meeting you. This is episode, what episode are we on here? Looking at the sheet here, we're on episode 3. I could have just looked behind Aurora. We're on episode 3, and I've met 4 because last week we had 2 guests. I've met 4 amazing guests and obviously learned a lot more about my co-hosts in these episodes that we've done. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, very much so. Ralston, I want to thank you for, again, doing this on such short notice. I know I just approached you a couple of days ago, and it does mean a lot that you were able to come on and share your viewpoints, share just your experiences with everybody, because that's the main thing. The more experiences people are aware of and the more that they get to see how other people have lived their lives will help them decide how they want to live their lives. Again, you never want to model yourself completely after somebody else, but you might be influenced by that. And that's the big thing. You want to find those influences that are going to change your life for the better. And I think you coming on today will hopefully allow people to make those better changes. I think everybody needs to check out that open letter to Orillia. It's not just directed to Orillia. Yes, was the content more for that because that's near and dear to our hearts. Mainly Ralston's, obviously, you're the one who released the video, but that video can apply to anybody, anywhere. That can apply, I'm sure, no matter where you are listening to this right now, I'm sure you have some thoughts about your hometown that you wish you could change. So again, Ralston, I want to thank you so much for being a part of the Expressions podcast. I want to say a big thank you to my co-hosts, Brian Weiss, Mark Flinders, and Aurora Robinson for joining us as well today. And we will see each and every one of you next week on the Expressions podcast. Remember to stay creative and always express yourself. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.